Almost everything about Carus's early career and life remains unclear. The Historia Augusta spins a complex fable that can largely be discounted. However, the sources agree that he was from Gallia Narbonensis. Malala's claim that Carus was 60.5 years old at the time of his death would place the date of Carus' birth in the year 223 or 224 AD. I want to preface this video and say that much of the chronology is based on best guesses. Our ancient sources are confused and jumbled. Rise to power. Carus had an extensive and successful military career, although very few details remain. We do know that he served as a military tribune of the 8th Legion, Augusta, and the 9th Legion, Hispana, and later as a legatus legionis, commanding the 30th Legion, Ulpia Victrix. Carus also held the position of imperial censitator of Gallia Lugdunensis and was appointed as the Praetorian prefect by Emperor Probus. His military achievements included successful campaigns against the Germanic tribes and Sarmatians. In 282 AD, while inspecting troops in Raetia and Noricum, the soldiers' discontent with Emperor Probus led them to hail Carus as the new emperor of Rome. Initially, Carus rejected the offer of power out of loyalty to Probus. However, he later accepted the position and became the emperor of the Roman Empire. Probus was slain shortly afterwards while inspecting the troops along the Danube frontier, perhaps preparing for a war against Persia. Carus was in his late 50s when he assumed the title of emperor, and he had two sons, Carinus and Numerianus, both of whom he soon elevated to the rank of Caesar, clearly signifying his intent to establish a new dynasty. This move aimed to secure the succession and consolidate his family's power within the Roman Empire. After his sons were elevated to the rank of Caesar, Carus led a campaign against the Sarmatians and the Quadi, who had invaded Pannonia, perhaps taking advantage of the confusion after the death of an emperor. Carus and his son Numerian achieved a significant victory over the invading forces. This decisive defeat of the Sarmatian tribes is seen as a significant achievement, as they often retreated with their nimble cavalry rather than being drawn into an unfavorable battle. Carus was either able to manage to encircle the highly mobile enemy or force the enemy against terrain obstacles like mountains or a body of water. Exactly what happened to the Quadi invaders is unknown. Perhaps they were defeated along with the Sarmatians. The sources make no mention of their fate. Either way, he was granted the title of Germanicus Maximus following this campaign. With this initial military success, Carus was secure enough on the throne that he was willing to divide responsibility with his eldest son, Carinus. Carinus was placed in command of the forces in Gaul to secure that frontier, which was frequently attacked by the Franks and Alemanni. Some sort of disturbance is also reported in Britain at the time. The Persian Campaign. Carus, together with his other son Numerianus, set off for the east to launch a long overdue campaign against Persia. Numerianus was taken along to learn the art of war and generalship, grooming him to become a good emperor. Other notables in Carus' entourage include the Comes Domesticorum, Diocles, the future Emperor Diocletian, and another future emperor, Licinius. Another notable figure is Aper, the Praetorian prefect. The campaign was launched into Armenia to support the king of Armenia, Tiridates, and unite their forces with his to launch the main invasion into Persian lands along the Tigris River. The timing of this campaign was fortunate, as the Persian king Bahram II was embroiled in a civil war against his brother Hormizd in the east, leaving the fertile heartland between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers exposed to Roman aggression. So sure was Carus of his military ability that he allowed enemy envoys to wander freely in his camp unattended. This was to show the Persians how confident he was of his own success and how well drilled his army was. This stratagem had been used by many commanders before him, perhaps most famously by Scipio, who captured 3 Carthaginian spies and allowed them to go around his army camp to witness the high quality of his forces. Carus undoubtedly expected this to lower enemy morale. Carus endeared himself to the rank and file by dressing and eating like them, a practice many great Roman commanders like Caesar and Trajan had done before him. He treated his soldiers as comrades in arms rather than servants. This campaign had been executed with impressive haste following Carus's ascension to the purple. considering the amount of planning and logistics that must have gone into such a massive campaign. Many speculate that Carus adapted the plans already in place from his predecessor, Probus. As Carus had been Probus' praetorian prefect, he would have had first-hand knowledge about the plans for the campaign. The Persians lacked adequate resources to oppose the Roman invasion, while still dealing with their civil war. However, one source claims that some sort of battle took place between Rome and Persia, between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. If so, it must have resulted in a Roman victory as they proceeded to capture Ctesiphon and the neighboring cities and townships. This military achievement was extremely important for Rome, marking the first great Roman victory since the disaster of Valerian's capture decades earlier. Odenathus had been successful on a number of occasions, but his achievements were not thought to have been wholly Roman achievements. It was this campaign that finally restored Roman prestige and washed away the shame of Valerian's capture in Roman eyes. Struck by lightning. Carus wanted to press the campaign even further and march southward towards Parses. But as fate would have it, Carus was bedridden in his tent due to some sort of illness. When a thunderstorm hit the Roman camp, a lightning strike hit the emperor and killed him. Many theories suggest that perhaps Carus had already passed away from the disease, and the lightning strike only burned his tent. Others, of course, suspect foul play and theorize that he had been assassinated and the tent was burnt to cover up the deed. The reason for the assassination might have been Carus' insistence on pushing the campaign ever deeper into Persia, where most would have been content in capturing the de facto capital of Persia and suing for peace. However, we don't know exactly what happened, but his death by lightning is not out of the realm of possibility, and that is what the extent of our literary sources claim. The sudden passing of the emperor was a disaster, and his son Numerianus was elevated to the position of Augustus. But everyone agrees that Aper, his tutor and the prefect of the guard, was the de facto ruler. It's hard to say what Carus could have achieved if he had ruled for longer, but it seems clear that he had dynastic ambitions and was willing to divide the empire just like Valerian and Gallienus had done before him. Clearly, he was an excellent commander and seems to have been well liked by his troops. With Numerianus in charge, the Romans quickly withdrew from the campaign. The reason for abandoning the campaign is not stated, but perhaps Numerianus did not garner the support to continue it as he was young and inexperienced. Alternatively, some superstitious Romans may have been dismayed when they learned of how Carus had died. Death by a lightning strike could only mean that Rome had lost the favor of Jupiter, and pressing a campaign so disliked by the gods would have been foolhardy. Either way, the Romans withdrew from Persian land, following the Euphrates north. While the Romans were crossing the river into Roman lands, the Persians launched an attack on the rearguard of the army, killing many of them, including the king of Armenia. Numerianus traveled through Palmyra and stopped at Emesa. When the Roman army left the city to march northward to link up with Numerianus's brother, Carinus, the emperor had died. The sources claim that Aper killed him, or that he died as a result of some sort of eye infection. Aper, who was the de facto ruler anyway, decided to cover up the death and hide the corpse for many days. However, when the army was approaching the city of Nicomedia on the 20th of November, 284, the soldiers noticed a strong stench coming from the imperial litter. When they connected this with the fact that they had not seen the emperor for several days, they became suspicious. The army halted its march and held an impromptu tribunal. Aper was, naturally, arrested. The assembly chose Diocles as the new emperor, and when he mounted the tribunal, one of the officers asked him, "How did Numerianus die?" Diocles answered by pointing his sword at Aper and shouting that it was Aper who had Numerianus assassinated. Then Diocles stabbed him with his sword, leaving Diocletian as the Roman emperor in the east. Carinus had been left in charge of the west during his father's campaign in the east. Carinus had quickly delegated the responsibility of defending the Rhine frontier to a legate and returned to Rome, where he indulged in all manner of extravagance and excess. He is said to have married and divorced 9 different women during his short reign in Rome. Diocletian promptly marched towards Carinus in the winter of 284 to 285 AD, and in the spring, before the end of May, their armies met across the river Margus in Moesia. Carinus was killed during the battle, or possibly assassinated right before a battle could take place. One account suggests that Carinus was killed by a tribune whose wife he had seduced. Following Diocletian's victory, both the Western and the Eastern armies acclaimed him as emperor. Diocletian then exacted an oath of allegiance from the defeated army and departed for Italy. Such was the end of Carus's short-lived dynasty. In the next video, we will explore the great rule of Diocletian, the first Roman emperor to abdicate. Hope to see you then.